To another high-profile disappearance further afield. U.S. President Donald Trump has dispatched Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to Saudi Arabia. This comes in the wake of an investigation into the disappearance of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Turkish sources say they believe Khashoggi was killed inside the Saudi Arabia consulate in Istanbul, where he was last seen entering on the 2nd of October. Riyadh has dismissed these allegations as baseless. Trump said he spoke to King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud about the disappearance. He said it sounded like neither the king nor the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had knowledge about the incident.
I just spoke with the King of Saudi Arabia, who denies any knowledge of what took place with regard to, as he said, his Saudi Arabian citizen. I've asked, and he firmly denied that. I've asked Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to immediately get on a plane, go to Saudi Arabia, go to other places if necessary, which he probably will, but with regard to this, go to Turkey if necessary. The king told me that Turkey and Saudi Arabia are working hand in hand very closely on getting to the bottom of what happened.
Well, let's cross over to Daniel Ranches in Washington for more on this. Daniel, it's quite a dramatic turn of events. What prompted the decision, though, by President Trump to send his Secretary of State to Saudi Arabia?
Well, initially, the Trump administration put out signals that it would be prepared for consequences if it were found that the Saudis abducted or even killed Jamal Khashoggi in a dramatic fashion. But this statement that you've just played by Donald Trump seems to signal that there is some preparation to sort of go along with whatever the Saudis and the Turks agree in terms of their relationship going forward. Some analysts have pointed out that Turkey can hardly afford at this point to be involved in a major diplomatic confrontation with Saudi Arabia, given its vulnerable economic position at the moment. That remains to be seen. So I think the question going forward for Mike Pompeo, at least publicly, is whether this is about nuancing the diplomacy and the public messaging of this, and whether it aligns with the US, or whether indeed the Americans are prepared to go it alone and have their own independent investigation, bearing in mind that there have been indications within the Trump administration that they have intelligence to suggest that Jamal Khashoggi was indeed going to be the target of an abduction attempt by the Saudis.
Well, let's rope in Guy Henderson now in Istanbul. Guy, it was expected that both Turkish and Saudi teams would conduct a search at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. What more can you tell us about this?
Well, we've been waiting 2 weeks, and as we speak, you'll see that the Saudi Arabian authorities have finally granted permission for Turkish investigators to enter the consulate here. We've seen them do so. This is meant to be a joint investigation between Saudi Arabia and Turkey, but the two separate investigation teams, they turned up separately, they turned up in very different contrasting styles. The Saudi convoy, firstly, fairly low-key, just a couple of cars, flashing lights, made their way in quite a low-key fashion. Then we saw, just as nightfall was coming, and there's some activity behind me now, the Turkish investigators turn up and really make their presence felt, I think very consciously in front of the cameras, pushing the media back, setting up a cordon, sort of the look of an official crime scene, and then they moved in this whole convoy. I saw, officers, fully dressed up officers. We now have a new convoy arriving as well as we speak here. It looks like a second forensic van or another police team turning up. We might be able to pan the camera over as we do, in fact. So, they're really obviously showing the cameras here, showing the international media, but despite the fact that it's very nearly 2 weeks since this disappearance of Jamal Khashoggi, that it's taken 2 weeks for the Saudi authorities to allow the Turks in. They intend to make their presence felt and carry out a very thorough investigation here at the consulate.
Right, and Daniel, so Saudi Arabia has denied any involvement in the disappearance of journalist Jamal Khashoggi so far. So is the U.S. likely to apply more pressure to bring this case to a close?
I think it's an open question at the moment as to the Trump administration's decision on what strategy to take, and perhaps Donald Trump will find more information out from Mike Pompeo when he can have more candid conversations with both the Turks and the Saudis. But the other thing to bear in mind is the US Congress. There are several Republican senators who are fairly powerful and fairly vocal who are suggesting that the US could use the Magnitsky Act, which is a weapon, as a kind of human rights tool that can be applied if a country or its leaders are seen to be violating human rights concerns in the United States. They have triggered an investigation by the Trump administration, so it could theoretically be possible that they are pressured into putting sanctions on Saudi officials. That's why I think it's important for the Trump administration to fact find and work out its strategy going forward, because there will be internal domestic political pressure to respond to this.
And Guy, a final question to you though. What should we expect going forward now in this case that has dominated international headlines?
Well, I think the first thing is, what do these investigators find? As we've experienced over the last nearly couple of weeks, it's been pretty difficult for the authorities to keep this information out of the news, leaks coming out of the investigation team, perhaps a coordinated effort there to leak that information, keep it in the news, try and keep the pressure on the Saudi side to cooperate, as their sort of international reputation was being tarnished as a result of these leaks. So now we've got the Saudi and Turkish investigators inside the building. Are there going to be further leaks coming out? I think we've already been talking a little bit about Mike Pompeo, the US Secretary of State. Yes, on his way to Saudi Arabia, but some talk of him coming here to Turkey as well to find out, firsthand what the different sides are saying, what their versions of events are. We even heard Donald Trump, maybe in an off-cuff remark, suggesting during that statement earlier, who knows, he said maybe this was carried out by rogue agents. So, a lot of leaks at this stage, though not that much hard evidence at all, if any hard evidence. That is perhaps what we might start to see being released, in the coming days. Maybe that'll even be, transcript at least, some sort of evidence about the alleged video that the Turkish media have been leaking, speculating that the Turkish authorities have in their possession of this actual alleged killing.
All right, Guy Henderson for us there in Istanbul, and Daniel Ranches in Washington. To you both, thank you.